The new episode of My Hero Academia Vigilantes has dropped, and your boy, Manga Man Drew, is going to give you the breakdown on what you may have missed in the episode. So get ready, because I'm about to break down My Hero Academia Vigilantes episode 6. So, there's a lot that we are going to go over in the episode because this is very character focused, so let's dive right into it and really talk about what makes this episode probably the best episode of the entire season. And for starters, the episode title Crossing Line takes its name not from the manga chapter, but a line/action from the episode in manga, which involves Knuckle Duster and Hall when it comes to his ideology. As well as the episode itself covers material from chapters 9.5, chapters 10 through 11. And yes, this episode actually covers material that was not initially in the initial release when it was coming out in a manga as well as the Shonen Jump app format. Because the episode starts off with almost the full adaptation of chapter 9.5 titled Mask, which is an additional chapter that you were able to read in the My Hero Academia Vigilantes manga volume 2. This episode adapts the entire chapter, starting off with the Yakuza talking about their troubles in modern hero society, and how this ties into the overall arc, which involved the idea of the decline in the Yakuza's influence over modern Japan, which eventually led to what Overhaul did to Eri. And what's very interesting about this is that we get introduced to a brand new Yakuza organization that is not going to be staying long. Because we get the name of the Yakuza organization, which is the Anagawa Tenchu, and we get to see their quirks in action as we see that Hall invades a few months prior and goes in for the attack and rampages all of them. And we do have, in order of their appearance, Honor and Humanity Tetsu the Tank, who can apparently create or has armor that's able to form around him like a suit that can blast out energy. Then we have Soju the Hammer, who can use electricity through the conduit of a hammer, very much like Thor. Then we have Haruhisa the Bare-Handed, who can turn his body into a rocky, hard-like appearance with gray skin and has the appearance of a sumo wrestler. Then you have Rijuya the Manhole, who has a manhole and can throw it with much force using most likely a strength enhancing force quirk that has energy coming from his arm/hands, as well as, a random dude that can harden his skin, at least on his left arm. And what's interesting about the episode is that we do get some cut characterization of the Yakuza when it involves Rojiya Yonanaga. But unfortunately, the additional characterization would not have mattered since they all are immediately killed by Hall, and it's revealed that he and Queen are actually working together, which is why in this scene, he was able to use his quirk to paralyze them with the bandages of blood on his arm. As well as something very interesting is that we also get to see the civilian persona or disguise of Hall, as well as the reveal that Queen gave him the pictures that would eventually lead to him eliminating Akira, as well as targeting Soga and his friends. So like I said, it's cool that they were able to adapt this spin-off chapter as well, but the only complaint that I have is the use of several months, indicating a significant amount of time has passed than what is assumed in the manga, which is that it takes place within a shorter time frame and not over the span of months. But still, even after the intro, something interesting is done between the manga and the anime, which is that we actually focus on Soga as well as get the proper introduction of his friends. Well, you have Moyura Tochi, who is the big buff dude with the fire-based quirk, and Wrapped Tokage, who is the lizard-like individual who was actually hospitalized after the incident around 2 or 3 episodes prior, where he was thrown into a building and he has been in the hospital for a short amount of time. And what is great about this moment in both the anime and the manga is that we get characterization of all of these people as well as somewhat humanizing them as well, which is going to be a running theme in the world of My Hero Academia Vigilantes when it comes to discrimination against individuals who are most likely heteromorphic or have heteromorphic traits, in the cases of both Soga, Wrapped, and Moyoru, which is actually going to lead into something we're going to be discussing later. But like the manga and the anime, this sequence is necessary for the actions of Soga and why he does what he does next. Because after this moment, Soga is confronted by Queen once again, and this confrontation has a slight change from the manga to the anime. One change is the addition of a news article talking about the death of the Yakuza members we saw in this same episode, and compared to the manga, it was just a slight reference, but we have more visuals in the anime. And another change involves how the trigger drug in the manga was actually in a briefcase, which is very much repetitive throughout the manga when it comes to Queen. However, in the anime, Queen does not have a briefcase. She just has the trigger drugs in her hand, but the result is still the same of Soga smashing them into the ground. Now this is where we get to see that Soga is a lot more protective than what is assumed to be, and that he is unwilling to take on Trigger and is willing to go after the person who is not just threatening his life, but the lives of his friends, because he's the type of person that sticks up for people who frequently gets discriminated against. Or, in another way, are seen as monsters, which causes the confrontation between Soga and Stenhall, as Stenhall arrives to kill Soga while Queen uses her bees to force Trigger into Soga, as we get the needed character development, as I was talking about, seen in both the manga of Soga being discriminated against and prejudged by his looks alone, and how this adds to his character and really shows a running theme in My Hero Academia Vigilantes when it comes to the topic of discrimination, which is not as much of a focus in My Hero Academia proper. And this is just even emphasized more by Soga transforming into a full monster and what happens next with Koichi. Because Koichi the Crawler arrives at the scene and sees the truth behind Stenhall, as we see that he tries to protect Soga as Stenhall is trying to slice, if not just outright kill him. And Koichi is a type of hero who wouldn't want to see someone die. He goes and tries to save Soga. But I will say that the anime really adds to the gruesomeness of Stenhall against Soga, and we're gonna see even more of these additional gruesomenesses towards the end of the episode. But we see that Soga is being sliced up even more in the anime than in the manga, by having even more slash marks on his chest in comparison to what we got in the manga. But luckily enough, Koichi is able to intercept Stenhall and take Soga and try to get him to a more public area, but unfortunately Stenhall is able to throw a knife into Koichi's leg, and while Koichi is still able to run away, we get the reveal of Stenhall's quirk, which once again is pretty much confirmed that Stenhall is just Stain, because we even get the quirk reveal of Stendhal's quirk being Blood Curdle, which is quite literally the same quirk that Stain has. And if you know anything about Stain, you know that he is not afraid to kill, and he even equates Koichi, while respecting him as a hero, just as bad as the villains. And as he's about to lay a killing blow on them, luckily enough, Knuckle Duster comes in with his flying kick, very much well animated and very similar to what we got in the manga. And this leads into the second part and second half of the episode, where we get a lot of well animated action sequences between Stenhall and Knuckle Duster fighting it out. And the animation for these fighting sequences are probably on par with some of the best animation that we've seen this season, because we get the fight animated as it was in the manga of Stenhall jumping and clashing with Knuckle Duster, and even Knuckle Duster's fake out, and even seeing Stenhall's resolution, which was shaped by Knuckle Duster's speech about those who lack conviction being worse than your average villain, and how Stenhall takes this to heart and is able to escape with acrobatic ease as well as using his quirk. And afterwards, we even get a little bit more characterization for Soga, as we see Popstep arrives, who is very worried about Koichi, but he's doing just fine, and is told to actually help out Soga, to which she does begrudgingly. And while Soga is questioning why they're doing this for him, we get a glimpse of Soga actually beginning to understand who Koichi is as a character, which is great because it's going to lead him potentially down the path of being more of a vigilante and joining them and helping them fight off the villains in their city. And with the changes that we saw earlier in the episode, it makes this sequence a lot more palatable and a lot more effective and really showing off who Soga is as a character. But with that, we're getting to the final part of the episode where we get the final horrifying scene of Sten Hall, where we get this dingy area, which is even more dark and depressing and dirty, even compared to what was in the manga, where we get the entire sequence of Sten Hall, quote unquote, killing Queen, cutting off his own nose, and finally truly coming into the name Stain. Basically, the past 2 episodes were a Stain origin story, and they truly made this scene and sequence live up to the character, with the area being more dingy and disgusting, and even when Queen pulls out the knife from her eye, it's even more drippy and viscous in comparison to the manga. And they just decided in the anime to add even more blood to these sequences to make it more disturbing and more effective and more visceral, as both that manga chapter and this episode ends with Stain rubbing blood on the wall, declaring his new conviction, and finally becoming Stain. And yeah, that's pretty much my episode breakdown and review. Once again, I think that when it comes to like the themes, the animation, all of that was pretty much peak Vigilantes for this episode. But the next episode is also going to be peak with the introduction of probably best girl of the entire series. But yeah, that's all I really have to say on the topic. And let me ask you this, was there anything that I might have missed in this breakdown? As well as what was your favorite part of the episode? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz. Hopefully, I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!